supposedly like not in a good mood that night, and they played really good. It was just different than how they normally played. So I don't know. I'm trying not to be too judgmental about it, but it's not as fun, that's for sure.
Yeah. So the band was really rocking after Mother's Milk Live. And now it's time to make the next album. And that's when we started working together. And tell me from your perspective, what was the experience like of making Blood Sugar Sex Magic?
Well, pretty much right around that time that we played at the Greek, I guess we had we took a couple of months off. And during that couple of months, I really was, and around that time, I remember I ran into you at Cantor's when we didn't know who was going to produce the record. And a lot of things were lining up for me as a musician and as a person right around that time. And I just had some epiphanies in terms of taking the direction of my playing and my songwriting in a different direction. We were so close by that point as a band and as friends. I didn't feel anymore like I had to prove myself or to be what my idea of a Chili Pepper was or anything. I was confident that in my place in the band, and I felt like I wanted to try just being myself, even though I've been gradually being more and more myself as a person and as a musician as that tour went on. But around that time, I was having all these realizations, just listening to music that was my favorite music at the time, and that was different from what the band was always listening to together. Because we were always listening to like Curtis Mayfield, The Meters, Sly and the Family Stone, ZZ Top, the Jesus Christ Superstar soundtrack, like different little things that we would listen to together. And even at home, that was a lot of what I'd been listening to, like Fishbone, and so I just started. Now the tour was over and everything, and I was living in this house, living in the Hollywood Hills for the first time, and just having really strong feelings, listening to things like the Velvet Underground and television and Peter Gabriel era Genesis, and I was realizing that a lot of power can come from not hitting the strings super hard all the time, from not filling up all the spaces with notes, from leaving big spaces, listening to that guitarist from Bow Wow Wow and listening to how spacious his playing was and how well it supported the bass. I've been a fan of them forever, but just hadn't specifically wanted to play like that. And so I was really starting to realize how much music was starting to really produce these intense feelings inside me. That period only really lasted for a few years, where I had a kind of a synesthesia, where I could, oftentimes it was seeing, but it was something in between seeing and hearing in my brain, that if I put on a record, the feeling was produced. If I put the needle back, the same exact feeling was produced again. And it was like watching a movie or something. So certain records were bringing up those feelings really intensely, or bringing up that phenomena. And so those were the things I focused on. Captain Beefheart was a real big one for me at the time. That was producing, I think, more of those types of sensations than anything else was. So started writing things because I knew Flea and Anthony's taste so well, and I knew the breadth of it, and I knew their open-mindedness. I was still trying to make stuff that I thought they would like, as I still do today.
Of course. But
I was coming from an angle that they weren't going to expect, And so that Breaking the Girl song was one of the first things that I wrote before we ever started rehearsing. And Funky Monk's song was one that I sort of collaborated with Anthony. He was playing the guitar part, but it wasn't really the guitar part. It was just one finger, and he was hitting all the strings, and he was going bum 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 bum. And so I took that basic rhythm and made a thing out of it. And Power of Equality, I think, was the basic riff for that. Was something I came up with early, and it was just I was really starting to understand how to get power out of simplicity, and wasn't trying to compete with Flea as far as being busy and stuff like that. It was one of those things where I finally had it through my head, Flea's allowed to be busy. Somehow, he can be busy and not sound